So this is the tutorial on carving your relief block. At this point, you have already made your drawing. My drawing, as you can see, is on a piece of clear film. You're going to take your drawing. Your drawing should be wrong reading. It should be in reverse. You're going to take it and you're going to cover the back of it with a 6B or an 8B pencil. If you have it, you could also use a Conte crayon, which works very well too. So you're going to cover the back of the drawing, make sure that you have graphite or Conte on all the lines that you need to transfer to your block, and give it a good covering. The more you have on there, the more it's going to transfer, and the easier it will be to get your image transferred to your linoleum block. So just going to finish covering it. Get rid of the excess graphite, and then I'm going to lay it onto my block that is the same size as my paper. I'm going to position it where it needs to go, and then before I do anything else, so it doesn't move during transfer, I'm going to tape it down. I'm going to tape it in areas that are non-image areas. That way I don't have to try to transfer over the tape. So think it through. If that means tearing some tape, smaller pieces, so that you can place it into places where there is no image to transfer, then that's what you need to do. So you want to tape it so that it's stable and it's not going to move on you during the transfer process. The next step is to transfer the drawing, and to do that you need a ballpoint pen, and you're just going to apply some pressure and basically redraw your drawing onto the block. So the nib of the pen is going to transfer the graphite that's below it onto the block. You don't want to push so hard that you indent your block, because if you make a mistake, you don't want to have an indentation that could possibly print. You want to think about the thickness of the line that you're transferring. The nib of the ballpoint pen is quite thin, so if you want to transfer a larger line, you need to draw around the contours for that line. Otherwise, you're just going to get a thin line transferred, and during carving, you may not remember that that line's supposed to be thick, and you may carve it too thin. So make sure you pay attention to the thickness of the lines, because you drew those lines for a reason, and you want to make sure that they are part of the final print. During the transfer, if you want to check your drawing, you can. What's nice about having it taped down is that you can pick up a corner and have a look to make sure that you're transferring it correctly. So as you're transferring, you're going to also transfer graphite into other areas that are non-image areas. That's not a big deal. You can always remove that afterwards or before proofing. It'll come off too just during the proofing process, so it's not really something to worry about. You can always use a bridge to keep your hand off the surface, but here's the drawing now transferred to the block. The first step in carving is create what I like to call the moat. So what the moat does is it protects image areas from being carved away by your tools, by your gouges. So you're going to take an X-Acto knife, put a nice fresh blade in there, and you're basically going to go around all of your lines that you are using as the contours for your image area. You're going to follow along the edge of the line at a 45-degree angle in one direction, and then cut the opposite direction at a 45-degree angle as well. So that's going to create like a little V-moat around each of the lines for your image area. This is a very crucial part to things that you really don't want to be cutting freehand. Something that's organic, for instance, when I go to cut the hair here in this block, that I'll do a little more freehand, but these straight lines and these specific contours, I'm going to use the moat technique to protect my image area and to make sure that the lines that I create are clean and crisp. So every line that you want to preserve needs to have a moat around it. The depth of the moat doesn't have to be very deep, it just needs to be enough so that your two 45-degree cuts are going to join to make that V-shaped line around your contours. In terms of safety, while you're using an X-Acto blade, of course it's a sharp pointed blade, so you want to be cautious of that. But you know, I've seen those blades snap, so you don't, again, need to put down so much pressure that you are bending that blade and possibly running the risk of it snapping. In terms of hand placement, I'll cover this more when we go to the actual use of tools, but always try to cut away from your hand. It's kind of funny because here you're kind of cutting towards yourself, but you're more likely to slip with your hand and cut your other hand than to drag the tool all the way and cut yourself. I always stress when you're working on woodcuts or relief prints, standing up is the best way to work. Sitting down, especially at the tables that we have at the school, those tables are really low. And you don't really want to place yourself into that close of a proximity with these tools that you're going to be using to cut. So my moats are all done now, so the next step would be to cut. So you have a Speedball tool. I have two different types of cutting tools here. We have the same types of gouges. There are U-gouges, so there you can see that that is a U-gouge. The gouge end is shaped like a U, and that's going to give you a curvilinear line when you're cutting. Larger gouges will take out more material than the smaller gouges. This is a V-shaped gouge, so this is going to give you a V-shaped cut. Depending on how deep you push your gouge into the material, that will alter the width of the cut. So what I'm using here is a Japanese handle U-gouge, and I'm going to place it in my non-image area, and I'm going to remove the material. And you can actually see there that the moat is protecting the image area, and I'm able to cut quite close to my line because of that moat that's there. So this larger tool is a tool that I would use for cleaning out larger areas. It's going to leave a wide mark, and with these prints, a lot of the visual vocabulary that you have is based on the marks that you create. So there you see the V-shaped tools leaving a thinner mark and a less curvilinear mark in terms of the shape of the mark it's making. And then you've also got at your disposal like a pointillism, I would say, or a staccato like cut where you can chip away at the block and leave a texturized surface. Any mark you make in the block with your tool is going to print. So as we discussed when we introduced this project, anything that's raised is going to print. So you can make different textures and create different types of marks with your tools that are going to leave different types of information in the block for the print. Things to think about: the direction of your marks, the depth of your marks, the size of your marks. So if you're going to use all the same type of mark everywhere, then try to vary the size of the lines you're going to be using or the depth of them. By depth, I mean the harder you push down with the tool, the wider the line is going to be. So you can vary the types of marks you make that way. This is a flat gouge, which is used to clean out areas. When you remove large areas like what I did down there in the corner, you're going to get little raised surfaces that will be the artifact left behind after the gouge. So those could possibly hold ink. They're raised surfaces, so you want to remove them. Also, when you have an area like what you see there in the corner, the paper could very easily touch down on that area. So you want to make sure that it's going to be really clear from the roller height so that the roller won't touch anything in there and create inking where you don't want the inking to happen. Now you could cut the shape of the block here. I could cut out the shape of this block, and that's one way to deal with this. But I like to have the original shape of the block for registration. That is something when, as you start to create shape blocks, which is something that also occurs if you carve too deeply because you cut right through the linoleum and into the burlap, it makes registration a bit more difficult. So don't push down so far with your gouge that you actually hit the burlap or cut through the burlap, because once you start doing that, once you start making holes in the bottom, you're going to alter the integrity of the block, and it may not register well, it may not print well, it may start to fall apart, all kinds of things. So you don't want to cut too deeply with your tools. Again, I'm being very cautious to remain between the moats that I've created in my block already with my X-Acto knife. And what you're going to see me do is just go around the block and remove the materials that I don't want in my print. At no time do you see me while I'm working cut towards my hand that's holding the block. In the classroom, we've provided you with bench hooks. They're there so that you don't hurt yourself. It's a common enough occurrence for students to cut themselves while carving, so you have to be cautious and make sure that you're aware of the manner in which you're holding your tools. So this is a fair enough warning to you. You've heard me say it in class, and I'm saying here again that hurting yourself is not a proper excuse for turning in your work late. Now in the classroom, we only have so many bench hooks, so you have to share, or you can simply make your own. I advise that. It's not a difficult thing to do, and it's quite easy. So here you can see the difference between the height of my image area and my non-image area. You need to make sure that the difference in height is enough so that the hard durometer brayer will not touch the parts of your block that are not in the image area.